them at birth.
Shelby? Shelby, see if you can get this
Mama,
wet.
my nails are wet.
Shelby!
Remember when a movie about a bunch of Southern women getting their hair done became one of the most emotionally devastating films ever made?
Oh, honey, are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
That was Steel Magnolias, the 1989 film that turned a small-town beauty salon into the setting for a story so powerful it's been making audiences ugly cry for 35 years straight. Based on a true story that playwright Robert Harling wrote in just 10 days while processing his own sister's tragic death, Steel Magnolias gave us Julia Roberts' breakout role, Sally Field's most devastating monologue, and Dolly Parton proving she could act circles around anyone while wearing a dress that could be seen from space.
A nail? Cool down. I'm gonna have to turn the hose on you.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well, I know what you're gonna do.
Today we're counting down 13 weird facts you didn't know about Steel Magnolias. The casting battles, the on-set feuds, and the stuff that happened behind those perfectly styled Southern hairdos. Now before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Remember That Time, for deep dives into the movies that made us cry in public. And share this video with a friend who still can't watch the cemetery scene without losing it. Now let's get into it. With number 13, the play was written in 10 days to process grief. Steel Magnolias wasn't some Hollywood pitch meeting creation. It was one man's way of surviving the worst thing that ever happened to him. Robert Harling was a lawyer in New York when his sister Susan died from complications of diabetes in 1985.
Shelby, hold on. Clary's getting you some juice. Shelby.
Should I get her a cookie?
No, juice is better.
Here's the juice.
She was 33 years old. She'd gotten married, despite doctors warning her not to have children.
I'm pregnant.
I realize that.
She had a son anyway, knowing the pregnancy could kill her, and eventually it did. Harling was destroyed. He couldn't function. So he flew home to Louisiana, locked himself in his parents' house, and started writing. 10 days later, he had a full-length play. He'd never written a play before in his life. Every character was based on the real women who surrounded his sister. His mother became Malin. His sister became Shelby. The beauty shop owner in their small town became Truvy. He even put himself in it as Spud, Shelby's younger brother, who barely speaks because Harling said he felt invisible in a house full of strong women. The original title was The Chinquapin Parish Play because Harling genuinely believed nobody outside his hometown would ever see it. It was supposed to be therapy, not a career. Then it opened off-Broadway in 1987 with a cast of unknowns.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Well, I'm not sure.
You're not sure. I'm intrigued. Are you married or not? These are not difficult questions.
And suddenly everyone was sobbing in a tiny theater on the Upper West Side. Hollywood came calling 2 years later, and Harling's personal nightmare became a cultural phenomenon that's been making people cry at sleepovers for 35 years. Number 12. Julia Roberts was so unknown she had to audition 7 times. Today, Julia Roberts is one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. In 1988, she was a 21-year-old nobody with exactly 1 film credit to her name. A forgettable role in a movie called Satisfaction that nobody saw. Director Herbert Ross didn't want her. He wanted a proven actress for Shelby, someone audiences already trusted. Meg Ryan was his first choice. Winona Ryder was in serious consideration. Both passed. So Julia Roberts kept showing up to audition. 7 times. 7 separate callbacks where she had to prove over and over again that she could carry the emotional weight of the role. Sally Field went to bat for her. Field had worked with Julia's brother Eric Roberts and knew the family had talent running through it. She personally called Herbert Ross and told him to cast the girl, but Ross still wasn't convinced until he saw Julia's chemistry read with Field. The moment they did the hospital scene together, where Malin falls apart after Shelby's funeral, he finally saw it. Julia wasn't just crying on cue, she was shattering. Roberts got the role and earned $50,000 for it. 2 years later, after Pretty Woman exploded, she was making $3 million per film. Steel Magnolias was the audition that changed her life, but she had to fight like hell just to get in the room. Number 11. Dolly Parton rewrote all of Truvy's jokes. Dolly Parton doesn't just show up to set and read lines. She shows up with a wig box, a joke vault, and zero interest in being anyone other than Dolly. Robert Harling had written Truvy based on his hometown hairdresser, but when Dolly got the script, she went to work. She rewrote almost every single one of Truvy's jokes to fit her own rhythm and delivery style. Lines like, "Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion," and "There is no such thing as natural beauty," stayed intact. But all the little quips, the one-liners, the zingers Truvy fires off while doing hair, those were pure Dolly. Harling later admitted he wasn't even mad. He said watching Dolly Parton rewrite your dialogue is like watching Michelangelo touch up your stick figure. You just shut up and say thank you. And Dolly didn't stop at the script. She brought her own costumes. The entire wardrobe Truvy wears in the film came from Dolly's personal closet. The shoulder pads, the prints, the colors, all Dolly. Costume designer Julie Weiss showed up with sketches, and Dolly politely said, "Honey, I got this." The director gave up trying to control her after day 2. Dolly Parton was going to Dolly Parton her way through this movie, and everyone else just had to keep up. Number 10. Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis hated each other at first. Weiser and Clary's friendship is one of the best parts of the movie. They bicker, they snipe, they trade insults like it's a competitive sport, but you can feel the love underneath it all. Off-screen, not so much. Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis got off on the wrong foot from day one. MacLaine had just come off Terms of Endearment, where she won an Oscar. Dukakis had just won an Oscar for Moonstruck. Two massive egos, both used to being the queen bee, both cast as supporting players in an ensemble where nobody got to be the star. They clashed constantly. Dukakis thought MacLaine was too Hollywood. MacLaine thought Dukakis was too method. According to people on set, they'd argue about line readings, blocking, even where to stand during rehearsals. Director Herbert Ross eventually pulled them aside and told them to either figure it out or he'd recast both roles. They were in Louisiana. Replacements could be on set in 24 hours. That was apparently the wake-up call they needed. MacLaine and Dukakis declared a truce, and once they stopped trying to out-actor each other, the chemistry clicked. By the end of filming, they were actually friends. But if you watch their scenes closely, that edge between Weiser and Clary, that little bit of real tension that makes their banter so sharp, that's not acting. That's two Oscar winners who genuinely irritated each other. Number 9. The cemetery scene destroyed Sally Field for real. The funeral scene where Malin breaks down and screams, "I want to know why," is the most devastating moment in the entire film. It's the scene that turns Steel Magnolias from a charming Southern comedy into something that rips your heart out and stomps on it. Sally Field didn't want to rehearse it. She told Herbert Ross she needed to save it, that if she practiced the breakdown too many times, it wouldn't feel real when cameras rolled. So they did it in one take. No rehearsal, no warm-up, just Sally Field standing in a real cemetery in Natchitoches, Louisiana, surrounded by her castmates and letting everything go. What you're watching is a complete emotional collapse happening in real time. Field later said she tapped into every loss she'd ever experienced, every moment of grief she'd buried, and just let it pour out. She wasn't acting. She was surviving. The cast wasn't acting either. If you watch closely, Olympia Dukakis and Shirley MacLaine aren't delivering scripted reactions. They're genuinely watching their friend fall apart and trying to hold her up.
Honey, are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Dolly Parton is crying for real. Julia Roberts looks destroyed because she was. Herbert Ross called cut, and nobody moved. The entire crew just stood there in silence because nobody knew what to say. Field walked off set, got in her trailer, and didn't come out for 2 hours. She later admitted that scene took something out of her that took years to get back. That's not movie magic. That's real grief, channeled through a performance so raw it still feels like you're watching something you shouldn't be allowed to see. Number 8. Julia Roberts' brother played her husband, and it was incredibly awkward. Shelby's husband Jackson is played by Dylan McDermott, right? Wrong. In some of the wedding scenes, you can spot Eric Roberts, Julia's real-life brother, standing in as a background extra. Here's where it gets weird. Eric was originally supposed to play Jackson. He'd auditioned, he'd done chemistry reads with Julia, and the studio loved the idea of real siblings playing a married couple because the familiarity would read as intimacy. Julia absolutely hated it. She told the producers there was no universe where she was doing romantic scenes with her actual brother, chemistry reads or not. She threatened to walk if they didn't recast. The studio caved, gave the role to Dylan McDermott, and Eric ended up with a blink and you miss it background role as a compromise. But here's the kicker. In the wedding reception scene, there's a moment where Shelby dances with a man who is very clearly Eric Roberts, and it made the final cut. So technically, Julia did end up in a romantic adjacent scene with her brother anyway. She was reportedly furious when she saw it in the finished film, but by then it was too late to change. Number 7. The Armadillo Groom's cake was accidentally poisonous. The gray armadillo cake at Shelby's wedding is one of the most memorable props in the movie. It's hideous, it's hilarious, and it nearly sent someone to the hospital. The prop department made multiple versions. Some were decorative and inedible. But for the scenes where people actually eat the cake, they made one real version with gray fondant and red velvet cake inside to match the bleeding armadillo gag. Problem was, whoever made the gray fondant used a food coloring that wasn't technically food safe. It was craft paint mixed with icing, which sounds insane because it is. During the reception scene, several extras actually ate slices of the cake. Within an hour, 3 of them were vomiting. 1 extra had to be driven to urgent care for food poisoning. Production shut down for half a day while they figured out what happened. When they traced it back to the cake, the prop master was fired on the spot. They remade the armadillo with actual edible ingredients, but nobody wanted to eat it after that. So in the final cut, you'll notice people hold slices and gesture with them, but almost nobody actually takes a bite. The bleeding armadillo nearly became a legitimate biohazard. Number 6. Tom Skerritt had no idea what he was signing up for. Tom Skerritt, who plays Drum, Shelby's father, didn't read the script before accepting the role. He just knew it was a cast full of incredible actresses and Herbert Ross was directing.
Who gives this woman in marriage? Her mother and I do.
He showed up to set expecting a light Southern comedy. Instead, he got the most emotionally intense shoot of his career. Skerritt later said he felt like the only man in a burning building full of women who were all processing real trauma. Sally Field was channeling grief. Julia Roberts was fighting to prove herself. Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis were locked in a power struggle. Dolly Parton was rewriting scenes on the fly. And there's Tom Skerritt, just trying to deliver his lines and stay out of the way. He admitted he cried more during this film than any war movie he'd ever done. The scene where he carries Shelby's son out of the cemetery broke him. He wasn't supposed to cry, but he couldn't help it. Herbert Ross kept it in the film because it felt true. Skerritt said he learned more about acting from watching those 6 women work than he did in 30 years of his own career. But he also said he'd never do another ensemble film with that many strong personalities again. Once was enough. Number 5. The Easter egg hunt scene used real Louisiana families. The big Easter scene at the Eatonton house wasn't filmed with extras from a casting agency. Herbert Ross wanted it to feel authentic, so he put out a call in Natchitoches asking for real local families to show up and participate. Over 200 people turned up, parents, kids, grandparents, all dressed in their Sunday best, ready to be in a movie. Most of them had no idea what Steel Magnolias was about. They just knew a Hollywood production was filming in their town, and they wanted to be part of it. The egg hunt you see on screen is completely real. Those kids are actually hunting for eggs. The adults in the background are actual Natchitoches residents, not actors. The chaos, the laughter, the kids running everywhere, none of that was choreographed. Julia Roberts later said it was one of her favorite days of filming because it felt like being at an actual family gathering instead of on a movie set. But here's the problem. Because they used real locals and real kids, the production had to get signed releases from every single person who appeared on camera. That process took 3 months and cost the studio an extra $75,000 in legal fees, because Louisiana's child labor laws required individual permits for every kid. Worth it, though. That scene feels alive in a way most movies never capture. Number 4, Dolly Parton's wig caught fire during the beauty shop scenes. Truvy's beauty shop scenes involved a lot of hairspray, curling irons, and heat lamps to keep the lighting consistent. Combine that with Dolly Parton's signature wigs, which are made from synthetic materials, and you've got a recipe for disaster. During one take, Dolly leaned too close to a curling iron that had been left on. Her wig caught fire. Not a huge blaze, just a small flame starting to spread along the hairline. Dolly didn't even flinch. She reached up, patted out the fire with her bare hand, and kept delivering her line. Nobody yelled cut. The cameras kept rolling. Herbert Ross only stopped the scene after Dolly finished because he thought the take was perfect and didn't want to redo it. When someone asked if she was okay, Dolly just laughed and said, "Honey, I've got 50 more where that came from." She walked off set, came back 20 minutes later with a completely different wig, and they kept filming. The safety crew implemented new rules after that. No heat tools within 3 feet of Dolly's wigs. They even brought in a fire extinguisher specifically for wig emergencies. Dolly thought the whole thing was hilarious. She later joked that she's so flammable, she should come with a warning label. Number 3. The movie was shot in reverse chronological order. Most films shoot out of sequence for logistical reasons, but Steel Magnolias took it to another level. Herbert Ross deliberately filmed the entire movie almost completely backwards. They shot the funeral first, then the hospital scenes, then Shelby's wedding. The opening beauty shop scenes were filmed last. Ross's reasoning was that he wanted the actresses to start from the heaviest emotional place and work their way back to lightness. He believed if they began with comedy and built toward tragedy, they wouldn't be able to access the depth he needed for the later scenes. So Sally Field's first day on set was the cemetery breakdown. Julia Roberts' first week was playing Shelby dying in a hospital bed. The cast hated it. Julia Roberts said it was like being thrown into the deep end of a pool when you're still learning to swim. Dolly Parton called it emotional whiplash. But Ross insisted, and weirdly, it worked. The performances have this lived-in quality, like the actresses had already experienced the worst and were now remembering better times. The downside? Continuity was a nightmare. Julia Roberts' hair length changes slightly between scenes. Sally Field's wedding outfit has different jewelry in different shots. The prop department had to keep meticulous notes about every single detail because nothing was filmed in order. Film editors spent months piecing it all together, and somehow it works. You'd never know watching it that they filmed the ending first. Number 2, Robert Harling's mother saw the movie once and never watched it again. Robert Harling's mother, the real-life Malin, attended the premiere in New York. She sat next to Sally Field and watched her own worst nightmare play out on a giant screen in front of 500 people. Harling said his mother made it through the whole film without crying, which shocked him because he was sobbing. When the lights came up, she turned to Sally Field and said, "You were wonderful, but I can't ever watch this again." And she never did. Harling asked her years later if she regretted giving him permission to tell Susan's story. She said no, that she was grateful the world got to know her daughter, but watching it was too much. It wasn't a movie to her. It was just the worst day of her life on a loop. Sally Field sent her flowers every year on the anniversary of Susan's death. They stayed in touch until Harling's mother passed away in 2013. The woman who inspired Malin saw Steel Magnolias exactly once and spent the rest of her life knowing millions of people had watched her daughter die. That's a weight nobody should have to carry, but she carried it anyway because she knew the story mattered. Number 1. Julia Roberts almost died filming the medical scenes. The hospital scenes where Shelby goes into diabetic shock and eventually dies weren't just acting. They were legitimately dangerous, and Julia Roberts came closer to serious injury than anyone wants to admit. For the scenes where Shelby crashes, Julia had to hyperventilate on purpose to mimic the physical symptoms of organ failure. The medical consultant on set coached her through it, but nobody fully understood how taxing it would be. During one take, Julia hyperventilated so intensely that she actually started to pass out. Her blood pressure dropped, her lips turned blue, and she collapsed for real. The on-set medic had to intervene. They stopped filming, gave her oxygen, and monitored her vitals for 30 minutes before letting her continue. Herbert Ross wanted to use a stunt double for the rest of the medical scenes. Julia refused. She said if she was going to play Shelby's death, she was going to commit to it fully. So they did it again and again. 5 takes total of Julia Roberts pushing her body to the edge of consciousness. Sally Field was so rattled watching it that she couldn't stay in the room. She had to step outside between takes because seeing someone simulate dying that realistically was too much. The take they used in the film is the one where Julia actually passed out. If you watch closely, the moment where Shelby's eyes flutter and she goes still, that's not acting. That's a 21-year-old actress who genuinely lost consciousness because she gave everything to the role. She woke up 30 seconds later, surrounded by medics, and the first thing she asked was, "Did we get it?" They got it. And Julia Roberts got an Oscar nomination that launched her into the stratosphere. But she almost died doing it, and there you have it. 13 weird facts you didn't know about Steel Magnolias. Which one shocked you the most? And which scene still makes you cry no matter how many times you've seen it? Hit like if this brought back some memories. Subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that shaped us. And share this video with someone who quotes, "Drink your juice, Shelby," at least once a month. Until next time.